Good Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. A little later in the show, we'll be joined by Stephen Means, talk some Ohio State Buckeyes, getting ready for that game against Michigan Saturday at noon. Another game going on that we're going to talk about a little bit before that. The Browns getting ready to host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some interesting things going on out in Berea. David Njoku working on the side today, ankle and knee issues. Miles Garrett, Davian Clowney, Joel Bitonio, Amari Cooper all getting rest as veterans have done pretty much all year. Ronnie Harrison, Halode Froholt not practicing because of illness. Greg Newsome and DeAnthony Bell in the concussion protocol. Not on the field. Another interesting thing, we mentioned yesterday the Browns signed Greg Mance, center. It's important to note he was starting center in Houston when Deshaun Watson was a quarterback there for a period of time, which is kind of interesting. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik, plain dealer, cleveland.com. And Tim, it seems like it's the same thing over and over again. Browns need to win. Playoff hopes are slipping away. What really tiny ones there are would get another blow if they can't find a way to beat the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking mathematically like this much chance to get in. If they lose one game, I think it's over. Right. Any one game, it's pretty much over. And that's the kind of hole they dug themselves in, just with the way the defense and the special teams have had issue after issue after issue all season, really letting down what I think has been a pretty valiant effort by Jacoby Brissett. I know he hasn't been elite, but he hasn't been asked to be elite. He's asked to be himself, just run the offense. And I think he's done a pretty good job of that. But, he's a guy that is not going to win football games by himself. He's going to need his team around him to play well. And as I've said before, those things have really let him down, whether it's the defense, the coverage issues at the beginning. Now it's the run defense issues and special teams problems, up and down the special teams. Those things are what have the Browns at 3-7. If they're even close to kind of league average, we're looking at possibly 5-5 with this football team. Deshaun Watson coming in, really having a chance to get them into the playoffs.
Well, Jacoby Brissett will be starting his last game. Andrew Berry, Browns obviously have already said when available, which will be next week. Deshaun Watson will be starting. Brissett talked about what he has seen with that Buccaneers defense.
I mean, still a really good defense, not really giving up a lot of points. Guys that have been in that system, that understand that system, who've played with each other a long time, so they understand each other's responsibilities on each play. I think Todd is doing a really good job with those guys as far as, they've had some injuries in certain spots that those guys have filled in and played well. I think they're a really good defense.
And I am forecasting an 8, 9, maybe even 10-man box for Sunday against the Browns offense by the Buccaneers.
If this was Canada, we'd probably see a 12-man box or something like that against them. But, the Buccaneers are honestly one of the best defenses in football. I think they've got as good a front seven as any. Vita Vea in the middle is, I think, what everybody expected Danny Shelton to be. I think Vita Vea has been tremendous. He's strong. He's disruptive. And he's a problem in the middle. Everybody talks about those linebackers as well. Levante David and Devin White in the middle. They're sensational. They're able to really control things in the middle of the field. Antoine Winfield was one of the better young safeties in football. I mean, this is as good a defense as you're going to find in the NFL. So, and they're great against the pass and they're great against the run. So this is going to be a real challenge for the Browns to do much consistently, especially considering their struggles when they get out of that opening script. We've seen the last 2 games getting the opening drive touchdowns, and then after that really getting bogged down the rest of the way. Not getting any easier this week.
No, without question. This is kind of interesting. So NFL wide receiver rankings from Pro Football Focus ahead of this week, ahead of Week 12. Number 1, Tariq Hill. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. Number 3, Stephon Diggs. No surprises there. Amari Cooper of the Browns checks in at 11. Already scored 7 touchdowns this season. 3rd most among all receivers. 13.6 yard average depth of target would also be a career high. And when you think of that, that's a little surprising. That means they're having Jacoby Brissett take his deep shots.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper's caught the 2 deep balls that Brissett's thrown all season. The only 2 50-yard catches all season have gone to Amari Cooper. And, I mean, he's been exactly, I think, as good as the Browns could have possibly hoped for. Kind of like what I said with Jacoby Brissett, Amari Cooper the same way. I mean, Brissett and Cooper have had a real good chemistry. Whenever he's needed a big play, he's gone to Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper has really delivered at a very high level. You know, I'm fascinated as well. The article obviously says, you know, what he could be with Deshaun Watson. I think he could be even better because Watson's arm talent really opens up that deep ball that really Jacoby Brissett just isn't able to offer. And that's part of the reason why you see those 9-man boxes that are going to go away pretty quickly once Deshaun Watson returns. But, you know, Amari Cooper has played a huge role in why Jacoby Brissett has played well. I've said before, he needs guys around him to play well. Amari Cooper has absolutely stepped up. And it's everything I think the Browns could have wanted out of the number 1 guy. And I think it should be fun to see kind of what he can do as Deshaun Watson's number 1 guy starting next week.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. That's something to look forward to. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
If the Browns fire Joe Woods, could you see them hiring Brian Flores? I mean, that was the reason that Deshaun was wanting to go to Miami, if I'm correct, right, was to play for Brian Flores. So do you think that they could maybe bring him on the staff to appease the quarterback? But I don't know if they're going to fire Joe Woods or Mike Prefer. I just hope that we get better. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I think defensive coordinator really doesn't affect what a quarterback does. So hiring Brian Flores, if they do it, it's because they think he can turn the defense around. It's not to appease Deshaun Watson.
No, obviously, you're talking 2 completely different sides of the football. And I get the Brian Flores hype. Obviously, the job he did in Miami, he built a pretty darn good defense in Miami for 3 seasons. And we've seen that team really take off under Mike McDaniel's leadership. But even looking at Brian Flores' his history, he's never been a true defensive coordinator. He went from being a linebackers coach and a positions coach in New England to being the head coach of the Dolphins and never really been a defensive coordinator. So technically, we don't really know how good he is at it. I mean, we know he has a history of being a defensive guy. We just never seen him construct a defense, construct a scheme around guys he has. We haven't seen that really happen. So in some ways, I think Brian Flores is kind of an unknown as a DC.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think he'll probably get another shot as a head coach. The whole legal side of it, that factors into it. I mean, let's not lie. That factors into it. This is kind of interesting as well. So these are 3 defensive candidates to replace Joe Woods, according to Dog Pound Daily. Number 3, Mike Zimmer, former head coach of the Vikings when Kevin Stefanski was there. He was also a really good defensive coordinator with both the Bengals and the Cowboys, and he has a history. Number 2, Vic Fangio. He is currently a defensive analyst for the Philadelphia Eagles. In his first year, was also a former head coach. And number 1, the aforementioned Brian Flores. Of the 3, I kind of like Zimmer just because of the connection to Kevin Stefanski. What I would like to see the Browns do, and I said this yesterday, I'd like to see them get the Bill Callahan on the defensive side of the ball, if you will. Somebody that's been a head coach that is a little bit older and doesn't really have head coaching aspirations again, that wants to run the defense and is there as a resource for Kevin Stefanski.
Absolutely. I think they need to find their own Leslie Frazier. We've seen, what kind of impact he's had on the Bills defense. Same with Steve Spagnuolo of the Kansas City Chiefs. I know that, Kansas City hasn't always had a good defense, but Spagnuolo, I think, has done a good job in key situations for that defense. And I agree with you. Of those 3, I think Zimmer would be the one that I think would be the most likely, again, because of the Stefanski connection. And you bring up a good point, does Mike Zimmer really want to be a head coach again? Or could he just go to Cleveland, and coach under a guy that he knows very well in Kevin Stefanski? To me, just connecting the dots, it would make a lot of sense because we've seen just how good of a defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer has been everywhere he's gone. I mean, we saw the defense, after he came in for Marvin Lewis as the defensive coordinator in Cincinnati. Under Marvin Lewis in Cincinnati, we saw the Bengals really become a really talented defense. So that would be a good area, I think, a good place to look for as far as the defensive coordinator goes. I don't know where they're going to go for it. We still got weeks before we even really get into the NFL hiring cycle for, head coaches, defensive coordinators, you name it. But I agree, there's got to be a change at that position. And, they got to find a pretty good guy who can, rally this defense together, inspire them, create a good scheme, and really get them to play with some toughness, which are things I said that Joe Woods just has not been able to do this season.
Yeah, and an added footnote with Zimmer, he's currently the defensive analyst for Jackson State for Deion Sanders, who was one of his DBs when he was DB coach back in Dallas. So there are histories there where he would be willing to do that with a guy that he's connected with, like Kevin Stefanski. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason before we head to break.
How y'all guys doing? This Big ET. 3-7, season is likely over. I know it's a never say never situation because weird things can happen. What I'm more concerned about is I know everybody keeps saying we got Deshaun for not just this year, but for multiple years. Problem is, starting next year, his contract, Miles' contract, and Denzel's contract cap hits explode. I already feel like we're going to be making changes to the defense. And who's to say that because of the cap hit, we don't know if Jadavian going to come back. Because of these cap hits, you got to have cap cuts to make necessary changes, especially on the defense. Who's to say that the players we replace now is going to be just as good, even better? I haven't had confidence in the defensive evaluation. Maybe we should bring somebody in to help. I feel like this is the first time we can actually say that the Haslam's wasn't the primary problem of a season. But regardless, it's a total system failure from GM on down to the players. Changes will be made. The problem is contract and the money. I know that's why they rolling stuff over. Still got to figure out a defensive tackle. They don't want to go sign nobody, but they're not hitting the draft, so something got to give. What do you guys think? Should they just be looking at players who are going to be free agents now and try to start getting together what they need, just like they did with Baker? They knew mid-season they was going to make a change. What do you guys think? Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Yeah, I think there's going to be a scheme change, and it will affect. Anytime there's a scheme change, you're going to change the personnel. The one thing I'll say, their salary cap people are pretty sharp. You can renegotiate eventually. That bill comes due, but they're good enough. They can kick it down the road 3, 4, 5 years the way they've been doing it.
Yeah, and let's not forget also they have about $30+ million in salary cap space, which you can roll over into the next cycle. So the cap should go up. You would think with the money that the NFL is getting out of the Amazon deal, that cap should go up. And let's not forget also, it takes one big massive contract restructure. Say, if they want to restructure Deshaun Watson's contract again for this season, convert much of his cap hit into a signing bonus, kind of like what they did this season. All of a sudden you can free up a gigantic amount of cap space, but just by getting one of those players to do it. I don't know if it'll be Deshaun again or for somebody else, but all it takes is one big name to be willing to do that. And all of a sudden you've created your cap space. And we've seen throughout the NFL, cap space can be manipulated. Cap space, there's the joke out there on Twitter that, cap space is a myth. It's not real, that the salary cap is not real. It is, but it's shown that it can be very manipulated. There's ways around it. And considering how smart the Browns are in managing the budget, managing the cap, it wouldn't surprise me if they have multiple ways and multiple things planned and multiple ways to kind of make sure they're under the cap, as well as making sure they're continuing to roll over money in the next year, because that's the hidden trick, is making sure you can have extra room on top of the cap because of that rollover. Yeah,
and the flip side of it is that cap's going to keep going up because eventually sports wagering will be coming in some form or fashion. There will be a revenue stream from that. So that cap's just going to keep going up and up and up. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the side of the break. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, look a little more intensely at the Browns-Buccaneers matchup. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
Tim Bielik and I continue talking Browns. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Why is it that Jacoby Brissett seems to be running Baker Mayfield plays? It appears that Kevin Stefanski has not evolved as a play caller over the last 3 years. He's still running Baker Mayfield plays, and he's still running the same formations from 3 years ago. Why is it that the offense has not evolved? I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on this. No new plays, none of this stuff. I mean, you look at Andy Reid week after week. He is coming up with new plays, new formations, moving people around. To be a top 5 play caller in the league, Kevin Stefanski right now just does not look like a top 5 play caller in the NFL.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, what I would say to that is Andy Reid has Patrick Mahomes. And again, it's been Jacoby Brissett and it's been Baker Mayfield. And the offense was designed to be Deshaun Watson. So again, it's a fair question, but that's why these final 6 games are going to be important. If it still looks like that with Deshaun Watson, I'm with you. Let's start asking some questions. But let's see what this offense looks like with Deshaun Watson as quarterback.
Yeah, and what we know from Kevin Stefanski is he's a pretty smart guy as far as a play caller. I mean, Baker Mayfield and Jacoby Brissett, they're bottom-tier starting quarterbacks. We've seen Baker Mayfield benched now twice in Carolina this season. Jacoby Brissett's been a backup by and large for most of his career. Big part of that is, he hasn't any explosive plays, and he's not a big touchdown thrower. So naturally, you're not going to run a high-risk offense for 2 guys who can't turn those high-risk plays into high-reward plays as often as a guy like Deshaun Watson can. So naturally, you're going to dial back the offense a little bit, not ask them to do too much, because if you ask those guys to do too much, that can put you in bad positions. Whereas a guy like Deshaun Watson, he's a Pro Bowl quarterback. He threw for almost 5,000 yards in 2020 with basically an expansion team around him. And, he still made them look competitive. They were a 4-win team in 2020. I get that. But the reverse argument I would make to that is they would probably have 1 win that season if Deshaun Watson wasn't there. And I mean, look at them now. They have 5 wins since, the start of the 2021 season, since the last time Deshaun Watson has played for the Houston Texans. So he's just a naturally more talented quarterback, and when you have a more talented quarterback, you're going to open up the offense more, take advantage of his skill set. So it wouldn't be a surprise if all of a sudden, when the Browns go to Houston in about 11 days, they open it up more, 3 receivers, 4 receivers, probably even 5 receivers, because Deshaun Watson can play that type of game. He has the arm talent to stress defenses vertically as well as horizontally. He's got the mobility to do it. We may still see elements of the Stefanski offense because it's what he knows well and it's what he's created. But what we've seen is he knows how to scheme an offense to, prop his quarterbacks up rather than force them to be something they're not. So I'm fascinated what he can do with Deshaun Watson.
I would agree. All right, let's take a look. Pete Prisco, Week 12 predictions, CBSSports.com. He has the Buccaneers winning this one 30-17. The Browns are bad on defense, so look for Tom Brady to have a solid day. The Browns' running game is limited. Bucks take it. When you look at this game, what do you see as some keys in this one, Tim?
I think the Browns are going to have to find a way to get pressure up the middle on Tom Brady. I mean, it's a different type of quarterback to prepare for because most of these quarterbacks you see nowadays, they're guys that can win with their feet. Brady is really good at manipulating the pocket, so you have to be able to get pressure up the middle and really make him uncomfortable, make him have to move around, make him have to put his eyes down if possible. And you're going to have to watch out for those receivers as well. For the offense, you're going to have to find a way to get this Tampa defense off balance. You're going to have to be aggressive with first down. You can't just be predictable with your play calling. You can't just lean on the run. You're going to have to trust Jacoby Brissett a little bit with his arm, even though this is a really good passing defense as well. And if you're the defense, you have to find a way. You simply have to find a way to stop Tampa Bay's running game. Now, this is the worst running game in the NFL. We've seen that means very little. The Browns have let the Dolphins, Bills, and Chargers run wild on them at points in the season. There was a time to button down. It's against this Tampa Bay offense, and you have to hope that with the Buccaneers coming off their bye week, if you're the Browns, that they're rusty, that it takes them a while to get into the game, and just hope that you get a few bounces to go your way. But I'm with Pete Prisco, just kind of where the Browns are right now, the way the defense is reeling, and the fact that Tom Brady has played really well. They headed into the bye with a game-winning drive against the Rams, and I think it was the final minute, and then a great game in Munich before the bye. I think the Buccaneers are starting to surge, and this could be another tough day for the Browns.
Yeah, they got to win the turnover battle, and they haven't been able to do that, so I'm with you. Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik. Make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, as well as The Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from The Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Aaron calling, lifelong Browns fan. My question for you guys on the show today is, why is it that Kevin Stefanski seems to be a scripted play caller for the first two series, and then after the first two series, he seems to not know what he wants to do? Why is it that Kevin Stefanski seems to not know how to be self-aware when it comes to knowing clock management, game management, or situational management? He seems too educated and too intelligent to be failing in this particular portion of running the offense. I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on this.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Ashley, you can't argue with the first couple series are more successful than the others. You can just watch the games and see that. But the offense has still been pretty successful as a whole.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, to that caller's point, there is, I think, a pattern at this point where the Browns do really well when they're on script and the offense is running on all cylinders. And then once they're off script, things maybe get a bit less productive from a scoring standpoint. But, I think Amari Cooper after this game against the Bills this past week said, joked almost, maybe we should script the first 30 plays. But, scripting plays is common in the NFL. I think every team does it right, and it gives you a plan for that first time you have the ball. And then after that, the chess match aspect of the game, I think, comes into play more. But, you look at this game against the Bills, right? Like, it's not Kevin Stefanski's fault that there were 3 passes that should have been touchdowns, that 2, they went through guys' hands, and another one, Harrison Bryant couldn't get both feet in bounds. That right there changes the game. I think the Browns, there are actually stats that track this. The Browns have been one of the unluckiest teams in all of football this year. For as frustrating, I feel fans' frustration about the offense, for as frustrating as it has been, I'm with you, Dave. I think the defense and the special teams have had much bigger issues this year, and the offense has just had the ball not bounce their way a handful of times.
Yeah, and again, the play calling, everybody can argue with play calling. It's very easy to second guess. The offense is still scoring a lot of points. Now the defense, Sione Takitaki, talked about trying to fix this Browns run defense.
I feel like we've been saying it for weeks, but we just got to be real gap sound, you know what I mean? Myself included, and everybody that's on the field. You know what I mean? Just kind of doing their job and being gap sound. That's how we're going to stop it, you know what I mean? Obviously, we'll try to find a ton of other ways to stop them, you know what I mean? And we just got to keep knocking at it, man, until we get it right. It's a shared responsibility, you know what I mean? I feel like as players, like I just mentioned, man, we got to be gap sound and play, the call that we got on the field, and we just got to do better, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't just put the blame on just one person, you know what I mean? It's a team sport, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of shared responsibility, and, from the sideline to on the field. Yeah, we just got to, when we are in our gaps, we got to find a way to get to the ball, you know what I mean? Not just be satisfied with just being in your gap, and then just going back to doing your job. So, you know what I mean? I feel like we got to do that a lot better, you know what I mean, and improve.
And again, Ashley, there's so many things that have gone wrong with the run defense. It's tough to fix, because if you fix that, then there's still, if you fix A, there's still B and C. It's multiple levels.
Yeah, I honestly am pretty pessimistic about this run defense this year, because I think more than anything, it is about how this team is built. Like, the Browns decided as they were building this team, and it, as we're watching them do this, it kind of made sense analytically to not value, your D tackle and in some respects your linebacker position as much, because analytically those positions don't do as much for you, and to spend big in other ways, right? Like, spend big on your secondary, spend big in edge rushers. Like, it just felt like this team, this defense was built to stop some of these high-flying passing offenses in this league. The problem, though, is now just about anyone can run them over, to the point that we're seeing a pattern where the best passing offenses in this league are saying, never mind with our normal game plan, we're just going to run the ball at these guys and see if they can stop it. And in that respect, I don't know that you're going to be able to fix some of this stuff this year. I think it's going to take a lot of people looking in the mirror and saying, why haven't, some of these mid-round picks we took a gamble on, why haven't they developed? Did we make a mistake? What needs to change? What kind of vets do we need to get in these spots to kind of help with this? Because it's just the obvious weakness of this team at this point. And that's why, I don't think this is even all on Joe Woods' fault. I think he could do better in certain aspects, but my line has kind of been, for the people calling for Joe Woods to be fired, I don't think that's going to really solve the main problems at the heart of this defense right now. You kind of questioned the inexperienced interior defensive linemen, and there was an opportunity, and none of them have stepped up. But I think, to your point, they almost have to look at how they're evaluating and what they're looking for from that position group moving forward. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason one more time before we head to break.
Hey, love the show. Well, the Browns stink. We know this, but they're good for the first 10 or 15 plays that are scripted. They can drive right down the field and score, and then after that, it's like a ghost town, right? So we just got to get better in the red zone at scoring. We can get down there, but we've got to score. We got to stop getting inside the 5 and just try to pass 3 straight downs. We've got 2 of the best running backs in the league, but you would never know it by the way that they get used in the red zone. Yeah, Chubb leads in touchdowns. We've got 11 or 12, but, how many times we've been in the red zone that we should have scored, and they, but also the Browns are also hit with the penalty bug. We make a 15, 20-yard gain to get it taken away by a holding or something crazy. So the Browns just got to get better in the red zone and do better with the penalties, and I think we'll be all right. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I think that last part of it is very important, especially for Jacoby Brissett. I think he is a guy that if you get in 1st and 15, 1st and 20, behind the sticks, as they say, it's going to be tough. That is not where you want Jacoby Brissett.
No, because, and this is going to change, I think, when Deshaun Watson comes in. And for as well as Jacoby Brissett has played, like, this offense is not necessarily an explosive offense. You'll sometimes get those plays from Jacoby Brissett. You know, I think he's done a pretty good job of linking up with Amari Cooper, linking up with Donovan Peoples-Jones, and making some of those plays. But Deshaun Watson, that's like a huge element of his game. So I do think that's going to be different. I mean, when it comes to running the ball, like that caller said, I think that's part of the reason why we're not seeing Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt as much as some fans would like. I will say, like, Nick Chubb's carries, for the most part, have been pretty consistent throughout the time Kevin Stefanski has been here. But the other part I think that's underrated is the fact that it's really hard to run the ball when you're climbing out of a hole, especially in the second half. So it's just really, I think, important for the Browns going forward to try to close out the season with some wins here. Like, they play really well with a lead, but I think overall, as an organization, as a team, they have to learn how to, you know, kind of mount a comeback. And right now, they're just not very good at that either. It's like when they get down, like, you kind of feel their chances go down too. But overall, when you're playing from behind in the NFL, it's hard to run the ball because you don't want to waste that precious time at that point.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and take a look at a running stat that's kind of eye-opening. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. You know, some fans want to say that Miles Garrett has not made an impact as much as, say, T.J. Watt or Aaron Donald has for their respective teams. But what fans don't realize is that Miles Garrett is a human being, and him getting double and triple teamed by 300-pound offensive linemen is near impossible to beat consistently. Now, the real question is, why hasn't other players on the defensive line took advantage of their one-on-one opportunities? If they could win their opportunities that they get because of Miles being doubled and triple team, then the other team can't focus solely on Miles, and he will start to make an impact if that was to happen. I just want to know your thoughts on the matter. Am I right or wrong in saying that Miles Garrett needs actual help along the defensive line in order for him to make an impact the way that we expect? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Ashley, I think that's 100% correct. And some linebackers, JOK is one of them, but you need linebackers too.
Yeah, I think to that caller's question about maybe why haven't we seen some of the other guys take advantage of Miles getting those double and triple teams, I think the two of the guys who I think really would benefit from that, Jadeveon Clowney and, like you said, JOK, they've dealt with injuries a lot this year. And JOK has played really well in his last handful of games. You know, he really started to pick things up after that Baltimore game. Then he got hurt again, had to miss some time. But this past weekend, you know, I thought he played pretty well against the Bills. He was flying all over the place. But then Jadeveon Clowney, of course, has been in and out of the lineup. He hasn't really been able to replicate that 2021 year he had here yet. So it makes it really easy for opposing teams to kind of still zero in on Miles. Now, I will say Alex Wright, you know, he's just a rookie. So that's been, I think, a challenge for him. And you see it in his stats to generate those QB pressures and QB hits. So I think that's definitely an aspect of his game he needs to work on. But he came here as a raw product. I don't know how much they expected him to play. I know they really liked him right away, but he's played a lot for a rookie, and especially considering the guys who are ahead of him on that depth chart. I do think a guy like Isaiah Thomas has been able to take advantage in a smaller sample size, but this is a 7th round pick who, has already managed to get a sack or a couple of sacks for you. So I think that's really been the one guy that we can point to that has taken advantage. But I think it's up to the Browns to be a bit more creative with Miles Garrett. Some of those other players he mentioned, like TJ Watt, Aaron Donald, those game-changing pass rushers, those guys are getting double and triple teamed and chip blocked all the time too. So I think it's about being creative, moving Miles Garrett around, figuring out ways to get him open. I know I forget which game it was now, but there was one point where, they had Alex Wright on the field. They waited till the very last second. He subbed out and Miles Garrett subbed in, and it caused confusion. Like, I would love to see more things like that.
Yeah, you got to make it so that the offensive line doesn't necessarily know where Miles is coming from. All right, this is this tweet from Jake Burns, and it's kind of eye-opening. The Browns' entire interior defensive line has 18 run stops this year. A stop is defined by Pro Football Focus as tackles that constitute a failure for the offense. There are 11 players in the NFL who have as many or more than that total individually. And that, in a nutshell, shows you how big of a challenge run stopping is going to be for this defense.
Yeah, and again, I think it just kind of shows, like, it's disappointing in the sense that I think maybe they found they had an answer here, right? Like, we heard all training camp how a guy like Jordan Elliott was expected to make a huge jump, and we just haven't really seen that from him. Tommy Togiai hasn't really either. And again, these are guys who you drafted in the mid rounds, and they just haven't made that huge early jump yet. But I think you kind of have to look at how you're evaluating them. Are they bringing, aspects that you want on the field? What can you do better to develop guys like that? Do you need more of a veteran presence? But I think you see it. Like, this is one of those things, like, a stat is great to accompany it, but you almost don't need any sort of advanced stats or grades from PFF to tell you that this interior defensive line is like Swiss cheese right now. I think that's how the league really looks at it when you have all these passing teams who all they're doing is running against the Browns to win, and it's working.
Yeah. What that stat tells you is your eyes are not lying to you. It really has been that easy. All right.
Yes.
Before we let you go, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason one more time.
Hey, this is Rizzo calling. Just have a quick question for you. So, with the Bucs coming up, what do you think some keys to this game for the Browns to get a win? I know we always say run the ball with Nick Chubb, but you see how that goes here in the last few weeks. We go away from the run. So, what do you think to keep some keys to victory for the Browns to get a big dub this weekend? Look forward to hearing their answers. Go Browns. Oh, oh, oh.
Ashley, teeing it up for you. What do you look here? Where are you looking?
Well, besides the run defense, I'm actually going to take it to the other side of the ball on offense. Like, I think it's important to know right now that this Browns offensive line is pretty beat up at the center. Obviously, Ethan Posick just went on IR a couple of days ago. He was very quietly, I wrote this earlier in the week, having one of the best years of any center in the NFL this season. He was playing really good, really underrated. Yelda Froholt stepped in that Bills game, and you saw the handful of mistakes, the fumbled snap, the 2 failed conversions for Jacoby Brissett on the quarterback sneaks on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. He got a false start call, I believe, that kind of derailed a drive right before the half. So he's like their 4th option at center. And then we go to practice today, and he doesn't practice because he's sick. So things are pretty grim right now on the inside of this O-line. They're going to have to get creative, and that's a tough break this week when you have Vita V on the other side for the Bucs, who is just a behemoth. There is nobody, I think, on the Browns. He has 7 sacks this year, which is a career high for him already, according to PFF. So he is a tough assignment for this offense, who I think could be really disruptive. And, the Browns, I think, are just so thin at that interior spot right now. They're gonna have to be creative. But if there's one position group for this to happen to, I think this O-line is pretty deep, which is good. Bill Callahan is one of the best assistant coaches in the NFL, hard stop. So that's definitely something I'm going to be keeping an eye on Sunday, and if Vita V gets going early.
Yeah, the other thing is turnovers are always a great equalizer. So if this defense can find a way to get 2 or 3 turnovers and win that battle, that will go a long way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the takeaways have been pretty elusive for the Browns so far this season. I mean, they're one of the worst teams in the league at doing that. So overall, I mean, I think that has to turn a corner eventually. You see them tend to come in bunches, but the takeaways are going to be key. And I think they're a key every week. And for some reason, I mean, they know that. They just haven't been able to convert them into a game situation.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right, Ashley Bastock. Make sure you check her out. Pages of the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Outstanding Browns coverage. We're going to step aside and turn our attention to the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's a pretty important game coming up Saturday against Michigan. Sports4CLE, Stephen Means straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. We turn our attention to the Ohio State Buckeyes getting ready to face Michigan coming up Saturday at noon. Let's take a look. College football playoffs released their rankings for the college football playoffs yesterday. Ohio State number 2 behind Georgia, Michigan number 3 ahead of TCU. Now the winner of the Ohio State-Michigan matchup Saturday will face either Iowa or Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. Let's welcome in Stephen Means. He is the Buckeyes beat reporter for cleveland.com as well as the Plain Dealer. Stephen, what are you looking at? What are you watching specifically as the Buckeyes and Michigan battle that you think will determine this game?
Yeah, I think it's all going to come down to the line of scrimmage, much like it did last year, where we saw Michigan basically run all over Ohio State for 60 minutes. Ohio State has put a lot of emphasis on the run game, both sides of the ball, both offensively and defensively. They revamped their defensive coaching staff, bringing in Jim Knowles, who has turned this into what is a top 15, top 10 defense. He wants top 5. Really, he wants number 1, but we'll see about a lot of that stuff. But he's bringing him in we've seen improvement over the last couple of weeks here. We've seen stars emerge like JT Tuimoloau with Zach Harrison and Tommy Eichenberg and Jack Sawyer and Mike Hall on down the list there. So it starts there. It starts with that front 7 stopping the run, because that's what Michigan wants to do. They want to run. They want to run the ball. They want to run the ball, and then they want to run the ball some more. While on the offensive side, it's like, listen, C.J. Stroud is one of the best quarterbacks in America. He's got all these great receivers. We're not really sure what's happening with the running back situation. Dallin Hayden has proven to be a viable option if Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams can't go, and his offensive line has had some good moments. But C.J. Stroud, as good as he is, does not have a win over Michigan yet. And that's an asterisk on his resume right now. He's been one of the more impressive quarterbacks we've seen in Ohio State history, but none of that is going to matter if he loses again on Saturday. So as I said to begin this, Ohio State's got to stop the run, but they've also got to be able to run the ball when they want to run the ball, even if at the end of the day they still want to throw it around with C.J. Stroud and all these receivers.
How impressive has it been that you've had 3 different guys step up? Guy goes at running back, guy goes down, next guy comes up. I mean, that has to say that the line is doing some good things, I would think.
Yeah, Day has said it. The line has blocked well the last couple of weeks. Now, they had their struggles earlier this season where they weren't getting the push they needed, but for the last couple of weeks they've done that. and it's just been about these running backs hitting holes. So it's impressive that the production really, it hasn't gone down. It's actually gone up the lower they've gotten on the depth chart, because Dallin Hayden is supposed to be their fourth-string running back, but they lost Evan Pryor, their third-string running back, in the preseason to a knee injury. Travion Henderson's been dealing with a foot injury all year, and Maya Williams has got everything. He's got a knee injury. He's got the hand thing. That's not a healthy room right now. And so to see a guy like Dallin Hayden step up, it's not apples to apples, but it is sort of like in 2014 where you saw Ohio State have to get down to its third-string quarterback to win a national championship. Well, they might be down to their fourth-string running back trying to win a national championship in 2022.
What's the mood been like around the Buckeyes this week, heading into what is always the game?
Short, serious, and it has to be that way. One of the things, we talked to players on Tuesday, and it didn't feel like they took the rivalry as serious as they needed to last year. And it's not really their fault. It's just, you got to remember, a lot of these kids are 19, 20 years old, which means that in their lifespan, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry is this thing that we all make this big deal about, and every network in the country is in town to watch it, and it's a high-priced ticket game and all these things. It's a rivalry, but then when the game is actually over, Ohio State has more points on the scoreboard, so what was all this for? And so a lot of those kids maybe walked into Ann Arbor last year thinking that they're just going to win this game because that's what Ohio State always does. And they got hit with a little bit of reality when that didn't happen. And so it forced everybody in that program to take a look in the mirror. And it's been the thing that's been on the back of their heads basically since last year's game, and how they've approached it this year with a more serious mindset. So, of course, we're in the week now where they can go full-fledged with it. And so it's been very serious, very businesslike, not a lot of joking around. We were 30 minutes into our press conference with Ryan Day on Tuesday before he even cracked a smile. And so the mindset seems right. They're saying all the right things and doing all the right things. We'll actually see on Saturday if any of that actually pays off.
When you look big picture, how big of a game is this?
Probably the biggest game since 2006, when they were the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. And that game was for a Big Ten title. It was for a chance to play in the BCS national title game. And it was a chance for Troy Smith to cement himself as the Heisman Trophy winner. Well, they're 2-3 this year, so it's not exactly the same thing because, Georgia's been what they've been this year. But the winner of this game pretty much guarantees himself a spot in the playoff and the Big Ten championship game. And this is C.J. Stroud's moment. He was a front runner for the Heisman coming into the season. He hasn't done anything to lose it, even if other guys have showed up and had some moments of their own. But he hasn't had that signature I am the Heisman Trophy winner moment. Maybe the Penn State game was the closest thing to that, and then he ran a little bit against Northwestern. But this is it. This is a stage right here to do what we saw Dwayne Haskins do in 2018, to do what we saw Troy Smith do in 2006, even what Justin Fields did in Ann Arbor in 2019. This is his chance to have a moment that people maybe remember him for the rest of his life. And it can either go in a way where he's one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of this program, or he loses this game and he's maybe one of the biggest disappointments because he was so talented but never won the game he was supposed to win. So that's a lot on the plate of C.J. Stroud or Ryan Day, who's trying to not go 1-2 in this rivalry, but then also this team is trying to win a national title and win a Big Ten title, and they can't accomplish any of that if they lose on Saturday.
Is it an equally big game for Ryan Day, given that, his legacy, if you will?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the 2020 game got canceled because of COVID, because if it hadn't have been, he would have walked into Ann Arbor last year 2-0 against Michigan, because we all saw what the 2020 season was. One reached the national title game, the other one was a below 500 team. But this is the reality. He's 1-1 against Michigan, and last year didn't go well, and Michigan's pretty good again. So you're 1-2 against Michigan 4 years into your career here. All of a sudden, people start thinking, oh, no, is this John Cooper 2.0? And nobody wants the 1990s Ohio State all over again, where you've got this immense talent. We're talking NFL Hall of Famers here. Eddie George, Orlando Pace, Terry Glenn, elite NFL players who all that talent, but they couldn't beat Michigan. And that's the last thing anybody wants to see. So it's equally important for him. I don't think if he loses it, he's on the hot seat, but that seat starts to warm up a little bit if he loses that game, because I think the combination of Urban Meyer going 7-0 and Jim Tressel going 9-1, the standard for that game has changed, where Ohio State fans are not going to tolerate losing to Michigan anymore.
Is that something that has creeped into his awareness, do you think?
He's not going to say it. Obviously, he would never say publicly, "I know that I need to beat Michigan or my job is in trouble." But it has to be in the back of his head because he understands how important this game is, and he's emphasized that since he showed up here as an offensive coordinator in 2017, and he emphasized it even more when he was promoted to head coach in 2019. And even the way he kind of talked after that 2019 win and how much of a relief it was that his first year wasn't, scarred by the fact that they lost to Michigan. So he knows how important this is, even if he doesn't want to talk about it publicly.
All right, before we go to break, defensively, who are some of the key guys that you think have to show up if the Buckeyes are going to do what they want to do on Saturday?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned a lot of them early on there, but I think the four most interesting, I'm going to throw some names at you here. Tommy Eichenberg has gone from, why is this guy starting, to, I think he might be the best linebacker in the country. And I do think it was a shame that he wasn't a finalist for the Buccaneers Award, which is given nationally to the best linebacker every single year. That's a shame. This guy's on his way to almost 100 catches this year. Steel Chambers, the other linebacker starter, those guys are going to be tasked with making sure that Blake Corum, if he plays, doesn't go haywire like he did last year. That combination of him and Hassan Haskins doing what they did. That's their linebacker core. The linebackers are better than they were a year ago, and that's saying a lot because they were awful last year. And then insert name on the defensive line. They have to win up front. They got bullied in way too many big games in 2021, and we've seen better this year, whether it was in the Penn State game or the Iowa game or even the Indiana game. Late on here, we've seen some stars emerge like Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and Zach Harrison and Mike Hall and Teron Vincent. Those guys have to win their battles up front because if Michigan isn't winning the line of scrimmage and and Ohio State's forcing J.J. McCarthy to throw more than he wants to, that's their best chance of slowing down this Michigan offense.
Stephen Means, Buckeyes beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we will come back, take a look at the college football playoff landscape, and a few more things about C.J. Stroud and some of the Buckeyes. Sports for CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Buckeyes with Stephen Means, Buckeyes beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Buckeyes getting ready for that game against Michigan, noon on Saturday. Let's take a look again at the college football playoff rankings that were released yesterday. So Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, TCU 4. All of those teams are unbeaten at 11-0. LSU at 5 is 9-2. USC at 6 is 10-1. Stephen, so Ohio State and Michigan are both in the East. They will not, the loser of this isn't playing again. Does the loser of this game, if it's a close game, really competitive, loser of this still have a chance to make it into those top 4, do you think?
I think it's going to be difficult, which is unfortunate. It probably shouldn't be difficult. You know, the number 2 and number 3 teams, and they've been that for basically the last month of the rankings, but probably not. I think depending on how this game plays out, the loser is either going to be viewed as, man, they weren't as good as we thought they were, so we're going to move them down significantly, or the winner is going to be, oh, they're so much better than whoever lost this game that they deserve the number 1 seed while the loser doesn't deserve to make the playoffs. I hate the idea of SEC bias, but LSU's got 2 losses and they're the number 5 team. Alabama's got 2 losses and they're the number 7 team. And Tennessee's got 2 losses and they're the number 10 team. And they got pretty embarrassed last week against South Carolina. So I would say no. I don't think there's a chance that the Big Ten gets 2 teams, even if it feels like Ohio State and Michigan to this point have proven themselves to be 2 of the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. A lot would have to happen. You'd probably LSU would have to lose. You'd have to have Georgia being unbeaten. You'd probably have to have USC lose one of those, and you'd probably have to have TCU lose a game in order for 2 Big Ten. And that's a lot of things that you need to have happen. Let's turn our attention to C.J. Stroud. You've watched him quite a bit. How good of an NFL quarterback do you think he will be, and do you think he moves on into the NFL draft after this season?
Yeah, this is the last time C.J. Stroud's going to play in Ohio Stadium. There's no need to even creep around that. He can choose whenever he wants to actually make that decision, but the deciding factor of him only being here for 2 years was made the moment he picked apart Michigan State last year. So he's done after this year. He's in the running to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. If you look on different sites, you get varying opinions on how deep and how good this quarterback class is. I think he and Bryce Young are the best 2 guys. And the thing that puts him over the top of Bryce Young from an NFL standpoint is that size. Bryce Young might go to the combine and measure out at maybe 5'9", 195 pounds. And I'm not sure that's what you want in a quarterback when you've seen guys like Kyler Murray suffer with injuries. And, we see how Russell Wilson has maybe fallen off a little bit this year. Those are 2, smaller size quarterbacks, and he's even smaller than both of those guys. C.J. Stroud, 6'3", 6'4", 215 pounds. He's got a quality arm and can make all the throws. So I suspect he'll be in the running to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And if that comes to pass, fun fact, he'll be the first Ohio State player to go with the number 1 pick since Orlando Pace did as a left tackle. So Ohio State's in a little bit of a drought there that I think that they would like to end with C.J. Stroud. But, yeah, I think he's a better NFL quarterback than he is a college quarterback. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm not saying he's going to go to the NFL and be one of the best quarterbacks in the league and be an MVP. I just think his game suits that level more because he isn't much of a runner and he is more of a thinker, high football IQ guy who can make all the throws.
Yeah, and people were so down on Justin Fields. You put a little bit of talent around him, and you play to his strengths. And now,
crazy what happens.
Yeah, now everybody's all excited about that. So I agree with you. I'm curious, and C.J. Stroud's a different type of quarterback, but it all goes to what you have around you and how you are having the offense designed. Who are some other guys you think could really make an impact in the NFL that are playing for the Buckeyes right now?
So Jackson Smith-Njigba's kind of out of sight, out of mind because he's been dealing with a hamstring injury all year. I think he's an intriguing prospect because he isn't a 4-3 guy like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave were, but he's really smart. He's really excellent in the slot. And we've seen guys drop in the draft before because they only played in the slot in college, like Justin Jefferson. But we also see what Justin Jefferson's doing right now. So I'm wondering if what he did in 2021 is enough film that he's still a top 15 pick, or do we see him drop? But I think Paris Johnson's another guy who is only 1 year as a starter at left tackle, but he's lived up to all the hype that he had coming out of high school. I think he's probably a lock to be a first rounder. But the one guy that is going to have NFL scouts salivating over him for the next 12 months is Marvin Harrison Jr. That dude's 6'4", 205. Let's just take his dad and make him 4 inches taller, 10 pounds heavier. And there you go. You get Marvin Harrison Jr. now. That dude, and I think we do need to relax just a little bit because he is just a sophomore and there's still room to develop. But that's a wide receiver 1 in the NFL all the way. It's not even close. I thought he'd be very good this year. I thought he'd break Ohio State's single season record for touchdown catches, which was set by Terry Glenn with 18, I believe. I think he breaks that this year, but he is so much better than I thought he'd ever be. And so that's the one where, Brian Hartline has turned Ohio State into a destination place for wide receivers. I think Marvin Harrison is his magnum opus as a recruit and as a development project.
Yeah, a lot of good wide receivers. I mean, look at Chris Olave and what he's doing with the New Orleans Saints. But Brian Hartline has worked some magic. Stephen Means, as always, man, great stuff. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you next couple of weeks as well. Thanks, Stephen.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
All right, Stephen Means, Buckeyes beat reporter, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. Make sure you check him out. Really good stuff, as always, on the Buckeyes. Getting ready for Michigan Saturday at noon. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Have a great Thanksgiving weekend. No shows coming up Thursday or Friday. We will see you Monday. We'll be talking Buckeyes against Michigan, like what they did, how that went, as well as Browns and Buccaneers. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.